Want to know what happens when a man goes from gay activist in London to discovering a love greater than he ever imagined? James joins me on the Love Questions podcast to share his journey. From embracing the LGBT community to wrestling with God's call to finding healing from his trauma, identity, and shame.
I mean, I always said I was never 100% gay. I was 110% gay. That's how strong those attractions really were for me.
But it all shifted when James realized his story wasn't just about attraction.
God found me. I was lost and God found me. And the story of my lost, if you like, and we've all got a lost story somewhere down the line, but my lost story's got, it weaves in so many different things. From activist to follower of Jesus, this is James' story. Let's dive in. Hey, I'm PJ, and thanks for joining us on Love Questions podcast. Hey, the reason this podcast exists is because we want to speak the truth about what God says about all the debated issues, giving you a Christian perspective so you can understand why we think the way we think, and talking straight about what we believe is just a better way of living. And we're not going to avoid things. We'll talk LGBT, sexuality, all the issues where people are trying to get you and me to shut up. We're not going to. Hope you enjoy it. James, good to see you, my friend. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you've come over. Thank you for flying all through the night and getting your way over here. But I always love when we get to chat.
Yeah.
We've been, I'd say, friends for a little bit now.
We have indeed, yeah.
Praise God. I've heard your story, a little bit of your story. You've heard a bit of mine, and I've had some prayers, and yeah, good times. But mate, I'd love for you to tell us, tell us your story. Tell us what's drawn you to where you are now. You minister to people, you help, you're a truth teller, you're full of compassion. Yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, the key thing is God found me. Yeah. I was lost and God found me. And the story of my lost, if you like, and we've all got a lost story somewhere down the line, but my lost story's got, it weaves in so many different things. And really, if somebody asked me to tell the story, I started around the age of 14. And it started with a phone call that I made to the lesbian and gay switchboard in the UK. Mm-hmm. Now, this was a tiny little number in the big, massive phone book in the days when phone books existed. And it took me 6 attempts. I was so scared because I'd been experiencing these same-sex attractions continuously. I mean, I always said I was never 100% gay. I was 110% gay. That's how strong those attractions really were for me. But I called this helpline, and person in the phone was very gracious, very kind. But within 2 minutes, they said to me, "You are gay." Mm-hmm. And because I didn't know who I was looking for somebody somewhere to listen. I didn't feel I could go to anybody in my school. I didn't go to anybody in my church. I just couldn't go to anybody. And so I took these words to heart, and I began to live out of those couple of words, "You are gay." Mm-hmm. And by the age of 17, I got to a point where I couldn't keep this within me anymore. It's like a part of me was going to implode. Mm-hmm. And rather than implode, I thought I would explode and tell others, if you like. So, so I told my parents, who were just wonderful. You know, I was raised in a lovely Anglican family, and my parents said, "Look, we love you and this is your home." You know, this whole thing that, Christians are going to be rejecting the rest of it. Well, that just was not my experience. Some people are like that, but overall, that's just not been my experience at all. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think they've been even more gracious and tender and understanding and accepting. My parents accepted that from me, and I came out to a number of different people at school as well. Mm-hmm. And then that threw me into London, and I went and I just embraced the gay community in London. I was the first guy to come out in university. It's not like our university campuses today where there's often, rainbow flags and the pride flag and then the new pride flag and then all these other things. And really it was like cutting edge work. Mm-hmm. And so I got very involved in gay activism, but I never lost my Christian faith, by the way.
Wow.
To some extent, there was a part of me, there was a gnawing deep down inside of me. And it wasn't that I didn't accept myself, because I thought, look, this is my lived reality. This is what I feel, and I can't deny what I feel. So there's no point me trying to deny how I feel. So I embraced it. And I found a great and a deep sense of peace in that. But nevertheless, there was still this underlying gnawing. And I thought, well, that's because I haven't met the man of my dreams. And I'll be honest with you, I prayed for the man of my dreams. Now, was it that God specifically answered that prayer? I don't know. And in some way, it's almost insignificant. But I did meet a guy who just ticked all my boxes. Mm-hmm. And I found a sense of connection with another in a way I hadn't in the midst of trying all these different gay relationships, etc. Mm-hmm. And it was in the midst of that long-term gay relationship that somebody said to me one day, do you want more love in your life? Well, I mean, who's going to say, no, thank you? Yeah. Everybody wants more love in their life. Most of the songs on the radio about, love me more or love me this, whatever it might be. So I said, yeah, I want more love. And the long and short of it is this led me to a place where before God, I said, look, if there's anything that stands in the way of your love in my life, I am sorry. Basically, I repent. I repent for any way in which I'm stopping you from loving me as I should be loved.
Who wouldn't want that, right?
Exactly. I mean, it was a really, really simple prayer. And I just thought, I might get a deeper gooey feeling or something or other, Well, I'd be honest with you, I didn't feel anything. But I'd made a decision and this impacted me deeply. What happened is I then had a wonderful man, a few years older than me, who was a committed Christian. He didn't see me as some gay guy or other, even though everybody else, it was obvious I was a gay guy. I was as camp as could be, and I was really out there. I was in your face, about being gay. And, but he taught me what it was to begin to still my soul like a well-fed child, as it says in the Psalms. What's that practically look like? Is he taught me just to be still before God. Mm-hmm. I could only do about 2 minutes to begin with. But with a number of weeks, I got it down to about 8 or 9 minutes. And my boyfriend said to me, my long-term boyfriend, Steve, said, something's different about you, and I like it. I like it, he said. I want some of what you've got. Amazing. So he then made the same decision that he wanted to know more of God's love in his life. So he said the same prayer as I said. And the two of us had this strong sense of God in our lives. Now, that seemed ideal. And then we were the gay couple being invited to all these dinner parties, not gay dinner parties, but what we might call the hetero parties, we used to call them the breeders, the breeders parties, like, oh my God, Anyway, so often we go to these things, we're like, God's fine with this and God loves us and we're gay and this is how God made us and blah, blah, blah. And that all seemed fine. But as I began to deepen my own intimacy with God, as I began to open his word, as I began to meditate upon his words and begin to understand it, something deep within me became that gnawing feeling almost began to rise and come to the surface to the point whereby I couldn't ignore it. And I had a sense that God was saying, if you really want me, then I want you to follow me and let go of everything else. Surrender. That meant finishing with Steve, and I did. I finished with Steve.
This was an encounter or with God, or this was more you're reading and just subtly things begin?
This is a very, very slow process. And I'm getting more and more comfortable what's going on in the bedroom and all these other things and thinking this doesn't, something feels wrong here, And so I got to the point, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, Steve said he loved me. And I thought, well, if he really loves me and if the God stuff doesn't work out, I'll go back to Steve. I mean, I really thought that, I mean, I'm as selfish as everybody else could be in some way. But then what happened is when I did, in a sense, when I made a cut from everything that was L and G and B and T and Q and plus and all these different things, what happened is I then began a journey of what I now describe as a long surrender. I could never have named it as that before. And that long surrender was just this yearning and yearning and yearning for more of that love. I'd begun to slowly taste of this love. To begin with, I didn't feel anything. I just went with the fact that others said I was more at peace. I didn't even realize I was more at peace, but they thought I was. So I thought, well, that seems beneficial. Yeah. But then, in a sense, the love affair began. And I came to the understanding and realization, oh my goodness, the gnawing that's come to the surface, now God is in a sense, he's meeting me there, and he is the one that's stilling. I wasn't looking to the created world, to another creature.
Yeah.
Basically, the creator was beginning to, in a sense, show his face to me.
Wow.
Now, it was profound. I felt seen and noticed, not just by somebody whenever I was with them, in the hope that when I wasn't with them, that they might still be thinking of me. I felt known from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. And this love began to sort of pursue me and hound me. What then transpired is I went on a journey of a journey of prayer, a journey that one might call therapeutic. Some might call it a healing journey, or a journey of restoration or reparation. Some may call it a journey of reintegration.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is that began to show that I had got stuck in so many different parts of my developmental journey. And in brief, a number of issues I had to deal with. I was born 2 months premature with a twin sister.
Mm-hmm.
We were incubated for 3 months, so there was no parenting around us because our mother literally knew she was going to have to adopt us. So my first 3 months, there was no parents.
Yeah.
Then I was fostered for several months. Then I was placed into an orphanage, again with my twin sister, and then adopted into this wonderful family. But those early 6 or 7 months contained all sorts of layers of very early trauma. I mean, the bonding between baby and mother, a continuum from the moment of conception, is really, really important. We know that now. So what happens is both me and my twin, rather than bonding with parents, is we began to bond with each other because we were the only continuum. So I began to take on board quite a lot of my twin sister's personality. There was an incident where I was dressed in some of my twin sister's clothing, and it was a shaming moment at the age of 3. I had no idea that affected me. I was sent to an all-girls school for a year between the ages of 4 and 5 to help my sister settle into school. I was very much the confident character. And so my parents thought that would be okay. It wouldn't cause any harm. But really, it put me on the trajectory of stepping into a feminine world and a female world rather than the male world. So when I went to an all-boys school at the age of 6, I was bullied a bit. I was given all the female roles in drama. And that set me up really within a couple of years to be sexually abused by one of the teachers at school. And that went on for 3 years. Because I'd been sexualized, there was an older friend of the family that realized that I had been sexualized. Clearly, they could sense this, and therefore I was being abused. I wasn't being abused at school, I was being abused at home, or the home setting, not in the house. Because my parents had no idea what was going on. And of course, what grooming does, it teaches you not to say anything and it's your fault and all these things. So alongside that, I was exposed to pornography at a very young age. And so you got all sorts of different fuels coming together. And literally, I'm living in this world of overt arousal alongside other men. And pre-puberty, I'm looking at images that I can't understand and translate. And here's my little body that sees these big bodies and doesn't look like it, doesn't feel like it. So I'm therefore beginning to question aspects even of my own biology and my own manhood. So by the time I hit puberty and my twin sister began to develop beautifully, and the boys wanted her, but I was still disconnected from manhood and boys. So what happens is my disconnect with men at puberty was eroticized. So I was therefore looking for friendship. I was looking with male connection, but by this point it had become eroticized. And therefore, by the time I was 14, and I'm ringing the lesbian and gay switchboard, I believe I'm gay. So I had to go back and visit all these things. I went back and in the midst of, in my own 20s, I went back and I found my blood parents, my blood father and my blood mother, and I made peace with my past. I went back and I met with both my abusers, and I went to forgive them. This doesn't mean to say they were let off the hook. This was, I'm saying I'm cutting myself free from the pain that you placed upon me in your childhood. Because Jesus said, I don't want you to have to live in that pain. And then I went back and I met with Steve.
Hey, thanks for watching. And if you're enjoying this podcast, why don't you sign up for our monthly newsletter where you'll get inside scoops and more information going a little deeper with the information you need. Go to lovequestionspodcast.com and you can sign up there. Wow. I want to hear more about Steve and that whole thing. But can I just say, so you're with Steve and you're pursuing God in this new way, and then you go down to some reparative therapy or some sort of exploration of childhood where you learn these things. But was there something going on in your life? It was a real hunger for God. You were like, he was reaching you with his love, but were you praying more? What did that actually look like? You reading the Bible, praying?
Yeah.
What was it?
I mean, what it was is first of all, we might call it we call it in Christianity, we call it intentional discipleship. But really, this was like an older, bigger brother who for the first time took an interest in me. Now, it wasn't that I didn't have friends. I got lots of friends.
Yeah.
But were they really deep, true friends? For the most part, we took from each other. Being in the gay community, there's a lot of people using each other, regrettably. And I say that from a place of great sadness, because there's a deep, deep need and a yearning to connect. So what happens is if there's a fleeting moment of connection, people feel like, well, that's better than nothing. Oh, that's understandable. But if that becomes a habit, then what happens is you begin to accept, I'm just worthy of just a fleeting connection here and there. But what happened for me is this guy who's just a few years older than me, he took me really seriously. And there's three things that he gave me.
Is it an older Christian guy?
An older Christian guy. So he was just 2 or 3 years older than me at uni. And that's part of my uni years. And he would look me in the eyes and he'd hold my gaze. Now, for most people, I was the college queer, the first one. So even though people are like, oh, this is a bit novel, new, but behind my back, I knew that a number of them were laughing at me, But he took my life really seriously. So he held my gaze. And then there came a point where, he might turn around, he might put his hand on my shoulder and squeeze it, etc. And there were sometimes he might put an arm around me. And then he got to a point where it felt safe enough and secure enough to give me an embrace. But the difference was this: in every aspect of gay relationships, all of them, including often, for the most part, with Steve, we were taking from each other. But this man was giving me non-sexualized, appropriate, healthy affection. And it felt radically different to everything else I'd ever had. And he would be affirming of me. So he was giving me his attention with his eyes, and he was being appropriately affectionate with no sexual undertones. And of course, most of my life, I'd from the age of 8, I'd experienced touch with underlying undertones, And so here he was, in some way, he was shattering all these previous experiences. And he was beginning to show me that there was a narrow gate through which I needed to be able to go through. I was going down this sort of long, wide road, and that other people were going through, and suddenly it's like he was saying, come this way, try this way. And it was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, and in that journey, what happened is is as I began to make peace with my past, which meant some repentance, it meant a lot of forgiveness. Sometimes that was just a cold choice, and eventually that cold choice would catch up with me. And then there would be fruit of that choice. So it wasn't like this instant thing that everything was going to happen. As I mentioned, it was like a long surrender. I just thought, by this point, I've realized I am feeling more at peace. I am discovering an aspect of life that if I don't discover this, I might be missing something that's absolutely gold for my life, which is about this non-sexual touch that is life-giving.
Yeah.
I was learning what it was to let people look me in the eyes.
Platonic male friendship.
Well, that's right.
Brotherly affection.
That's right. But it was something
connection.
I'd always been scared of that. That's why often when
I grew up, I needed that. Handsy dad and 3 big brothers, and I'm just like, but I always say this, my dad and all my oldest brothers, you could be standing on the brink of hell and you just hear their voice, or you might be touched by them, and you knew. And I just remember this so clear from childhood. You knew everything was fine because they were there. They were strong, and they were there, and they had deep voices. But that was, I just never even, and in my brain that would be sexual, but it was so huge in my upbringing. It was so formative and stabilizing, but you don't realize what you've got until
and that's it, you see. And this is why so many people today just turn around and accept homosexuality, because they've They've never walked the pathway of a homosexual. They just say, oh, that's how people feel, so that must be who they are. That's the way it is. So then we must, stop being homophobic. The most homophobic people I've ever met are people in the gay community. They're absolutely frightened to death of their own kind, which is the word homo means same. Yeah. The word phobia means this deep, innate, often paralyzing fear. And with the gay apps today, people are ghosting each other, they're picking each other up and dropping them and the rest of it. But what's really interesting as well within the gay community today is where people were looking for that fleeting, possibly sexualized experience. Today, more often than not, people are wanting to be kissed and cuddled. And they're just saying, I just want some tenderness in my life. I just want somebody to come alongside me. I don't want to have to perform.
Human touch.
Human touch. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. But as I say, without performance. And whenever performance comes into any relationship, it's because there's an underlying issue of shame. And the two key issues around homosexuality are shame and attachment loss. And that's not just in homosexuality. That's now in most young people's lived relationships because of our over-sexualized society. Because of the porndemic, which is significantly more damaging and long-term than any pandemic could be. The porndemic has literally crippled most people to be able to have an understanding and acceptance and the beauty of their own biology, which also contains theology. And if we don't bring in a theology, and those two words really means making God sense of our bodies and our biology, then we all miss out on what it means to have this wonderful thing called a body. And therefore they just become objects to be used and abused, and people are never at peace with their bodies. This is why we're seeing so much body dysmorphia today.
So the only access we've got, if the only lens I can look at biology and people and connection and attachment and relationships through is the sexual lens, then that colors everything. And innately this selfish thing often rises up, which is, here's what I get. And so then the relationship becomes self-centered and hurtful and harmful sort of across the board, when actually what I'm hearing you say, there's actually a different design, which is that bodies were made for affection, absolutely, to communicate physically, you belong, you're valuable, you're a part of everything.
Yes.
That's good. You're not an outsider. But that's all just gone missing. And even from the same sex, like, getting that affirming male touch from a big brother, from a father, from someone in your life who just lets you know in the world that you're okay, you belong here and you're all good, physically and through other communication. When that's gone missing, we're just missing out on a whole. We just narrowed this thing to sexual, and we're missing this whole other way that the human heart was wired to receive love.
That's right. I mean, look, there's a design that is to be followed. And if we miss out on that design, I believe that is the Creator's design. If we miss out on aspects, or we don't receive sufficiently what we need to receive, because we never receive perfectly, we know that. But if we don't receive sufficiently, the void becomes so big that we try and fill it with something else.
Yeah. It's too painful to leave it empty.
That's right.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, is it weird that a man should say that's an attractive man? Not at all. In fact, it's one of the curses, if you like, of the Stonewall riots back in the 60s, is that suddenly this thing of, well, we're gay and that's the way it is, so men fancy men and find them attractive. Today, men find it very difficult in some way to be able to have that deep bond of an intimate friendship that doesn't have sexual undertones to it. And that's what I was able to experience. This is what I was offered while in the midst of a gay relationship. And that's what led me away. I began to realize this is more wholesome. Yeah. This is more life-giving.
It's better.
This is scratching me where I really, really itch. And it wasn't just a temporal scratch. This was like, this is an ongoing, beautiful thing that's actually stopping me itching altogether. And so the more that I did that, then what happens is I began to take my place as a man among other men. And once that happened, men stopped being a mystery to me. And when men stopped being a mystery, then what happened, of course, because we're made by God, who is mystery, the deepest mystery from which we were created, which Adam and Eve displayed in their bodies, I began to then enter into that mystery. So then I began to find women attractive. Well, nobody warned me about that.
Wow.
You know, and that opened up a whole new chasm of life and of relationships and everything else.
And more mystery.
And more mystery. Well, the thing is, the challenge becomes this, and this is the challenge for many gay men. This is why I just have such a heart for my brothers in the gay community. And for my sisters in the gay community too, of course. But having walked that journey as a male and realized that to some extent I'm looking to all these other men to try and find completion of myself, and really none of them can give it to me. And then what happens is, having been quite a tender male, then the women would like me, but then I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm gay. You can't have me, darling, sort of thing. So therefore, in some way, I was divorced from women, but I was also divorced from men. But then as I've gone down this journey, I've made peace with my own kind. But then I also get to be able to enjoy the loveliness and the radiance of woman while enjoying the majesty of what it means to be a bloke. So it's like I feel like I've won the lotto like thousands of times over. This is why it's good news.
Yeah.
This is why, that this is God at work in our lives, and he's looking at every heart, irrespective of where people are at, particularly people who experience same-sex attraction. But we all of us, it says in God's word, we're all like sheep that have gone off and done our own thing. Yeah. But he's laid upon himself all the voids, all the wounds, all those things that stop us from being able to live life to the full, from having complete joy and being able to become dynamic love machines. I mean, let's be honest, that's what most people want to be.
Yeah, right.
And it's what they want to experience.
Where do I sign up?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it's a revelation of Christ, as a husband loves his wife. So what I'm sort of, we've talked about this in the state of play legally in Australia, and just I know there'd be people whose story or whose narrative would be like, how can you even say this? How can you infer that someone's who they are is linked to childhood issues or other things? And what has always troubled me about that is that might not be where everyone lands, which is in some ways, it's tragic from a Christian perspective. We want everyone to know Christ and come to know him the way we do.
Yes.
But equally, Christianity, if you follow the New Testament, was always about here's an offer for you. If you want it, come and join us. But also if you don't, that is your self-determination at work. You're free. So there's always this element of what you choose to do. It's really like the origins of consent.
That's right.
Consent is so important. But what troubles me deeply around the laws in Victoria and New South Wales and other places, it actually removes somebody's consent. If an adult like you wants to share your story and seek a life of your own choosing and pursue the faith of your own choosing, and it's bringing you much peace.
Oh, mate, I tell you, my
joy.
My anxiety is no more. My depression is no more. My suicidal ideation, which wasn't that strong, but fleetingly it was there. It's never crossed my mind, and it wouldn't do so. Basically, my heart is healed, my sense of self is healed, and I've got this peace that is just inexplainable. And yet, I meet. I mean, I've literally sat down and had coffee probably with well over 1,000 people who are same-sex attracted, and I've listened to their story. I should look like a coffee bean. I've drunk so much coffee, I tell you, mate. I'm like, yeah. But time and time again, within the first 5 or 10 minutes, I could have told them their own story. And it's interesting you mention the laws, because these laws now, particularly in Australia, and they're in other parts of the world, and they're trying desperately to push them other places. And who are they? They are the leading LGBTQ plus protagonists. This is not everybody in the gay community by any means. But the protagonists who are trying to push these laws, it's interesting how these are the only laws that try and ban prayer.
It's utterly patriarchal. Well, you must go our way, and if you don't, it's the Gestapo.
It's exactly what it is.
Because what happened to consent? What about you as a consenting adult?
I say it's the Gestapo, but that's another thing.
Sure. What about you as a consenting adult?
Absolutely.
You say, I choose to go this way. No, the law tells you that anyone who's even in support of you choosing to go this way
must be fined or imprisoned. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and of course, but I would say to listeners, the very fact that these laws have been written in this way means they know that therapy and prayer work. They're just scared that there's going to be less meat on the rack. And it sounds crude, but it's hard. It's hard being a gay man, and only 1%, 2%, maybe 3% of society are gay. Then it means you've got less people to choose from. You then got to work out who is gay and who's not gay and who's going to be on Pride March and not on Pride March and all these other things. Therefore, the opportunity to be loved, and it's a gnawing need inside. And if it is a need to satisfy something that is still a mystery, and you can barely satisfy it is a deeply uncomfortable place to be. This is why we have at all times to have compassion, sensitivity, and respect for anybody and everybody in the LGBTQ community. But that also should be reflected back upon people in the LGBT community, upon whom things should not be imposed. But if somebody proposes they want to take a certain pathway of life, they should be permitted to do so, and particularly as an adult.
Yeah, that's right. If someone raised in the Christian faith determines that they want to live a life in LGBT lifestyle, whatever, they're free to do that. Go choose your own adventure.
Nobody's stopping them.
Yeah, you're perfectly, like, we love you, bless you. We may not see eye to eye on this stuff, but you're free. Go in, like, we love you.
Yeah.
In the reverse, if someone wants to say, I was in LGBT, I now want to leave that to follow Christ. There's some people who don't. They don't want to leave, and it's their choice. But someone who says, I do want to leave, basically everything in these emerging laws is positioned to say we have to stop that. We have to paternalistically from the outside say you can't do that. This is bad. This is wrong. And I'm going, what happened to freedom? What happened to inclusivity? What happened to diversity? What happened to recognizing human dignity in a minority group when here's a minority group that our recent laws effectively say you don't exist and you can't exist. And anyone who tries to help you exist, we're going to put them in jail. I mean, that is the ultimate, whatever the phobia would be for that, that is the ultimate, in effect, it's bigoted, but worse than that, it's damaging against individual freedom.
That's right. I mean, look, what's happened is DEI, for someone who's walked my journey, becomes DEI stands for demonization, exclusion, and intolerance. It's not about diversity, equity, and, inclusion at all. It's actually, demonize the person who dare to question anything. Well, I mean, this is why we're seeing the mental health issues we've got, because we've got a whole generation now that is unable to be able to process even their own decisions and to get things wrong in some cases, but maybe even get things right. People have got every right to do this. Now, I've got to admit, some people have made promises and have tried to say to people, you're wrong and you must change, etc. Well, I want to say to them, you've got no right to turn around and make empty promises to people unless you understand how that promise could be fulfilled. And look, it's crazy. I have one friend who is very much 100% same-sex attracted, was in his long-term gay relationship, and he quit the gay community and he quit taking the title of being a gay man. He rejected that as an identity. So he rejected the identity politics. His life is flourishing. What's happened is he's realized his body contains a dignity that he was ignoring. He's come back to that dignity. So what's happened is he's now enjoying these restorative friendships that previously he never had. And his life is thriving. Well, I mean, there's nothing even there about him being changed, but he's got every right to be able to explore that journey. And if there is a change in his sexual attraction in some way or other, well, so be it. But also, this is about what does it mean for us to deeply be honoring of each other. I was given that opportunity, and I'm not going to shut up while others are being denied that opportunity. Why should I? Why should I be able to thrive and others still remain victims and can barely survive in what's going on around them?
That's right. And the false labels, I think, are really challenging. So you mentioned prayer and therapy. I've got tons of friends who have done a whole bunch of therapy. I've done a whole bunch of therapy. Christian therapy typically begins looking at your areas of your life. It's not sexuality focused. In fact,
it rarely is.
Sexuality really comes up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the areas in your life that were hurtful. Where might there be attachment issues that God wants to heal?
Yeah.
Where might there be false identification? Like you saw this at some point in childhood and it was really like damaging to reject that or whatever it was. This is just bread and butter healing, inner healing, most people would call it. Largely, it's often self-directed. So there's, well, what do you think the Spirit of God is teaching you about this? Where do you want to go? So it's very in keeping with someone's self-determination, and it produces great fruit, usually in a loving and supportive environment where people are affirming your very nature as a valuable human. Well, that's what I mean by therapy.
Right. Yeah, I'm hearing you. And look, and I'm quite excited in some way or other. Some of these laws, you see, as much as man makes his laws, God laughs. He just laughs and says, you really think you've got the last word on this? I mean, and I laugh because what happens is you see where the church was ever persecuted, it grew. Yeah. In fact, the only place it ever really grows is when it's persecuted. And so what's happening is people are being persecuted. Now, I've got people from eastern states here in Australia now who are suicidal because they can't access therapy. So basically, the gay advocates are now crippling the people in the gay community who are looking further and further and further afield to get help. Because they're saying, well, why would you restrict something from me? Well, what's the, so in some way they've brought attention to these topics, which has brought up people's pain. It's not about actually being gay or not being gay. It's about, are there areas in your life and in your heart and your relationships that are unresolved where you need to find resolution? And the fact of the matter is, you can't police every single therapeutic situation. You just can't, and I mean, and it's so interesting. I know many people who've gone towards therapy or towards prayer, and they found resolution around 2 or 3 different issues of their past. We might call that comorbidities. And then what happens, they come back to me and go, you'll never guess what? I said, what? My same-sex attraction like seriously diminished. And I laugh and I go, yeah. Why is that, do you think? I said, well, because basically the key issues that were coming together to make you same-sex attracted are slowly being undone. I said, so what's happening? I said, is that's what's going on. I said, you haven't even got to mention sexuality in some cases in a therapeutic or even a prayerful situation.
Well, I'll show you what prayer looks like typically. It's called Christian discipleship, and it's called prayer, praying over someone you care about, someone who's in your flock that you love. You pray like this: Lord, would you bless them? Would you show them who they really are?
Yeah.
Would you heal every wound? Would you lead them on your path? Would you help them where they need to walk your way and leave behind anything of their past that's hurting them or hurting others and doesn't please you? Lord, would you cover them and heal them? And would you put them in a safe, protective family and community? Would you lead every step?
Yeah.
That's what I would pray for anybody. But then there's this certain population they're trying to exclude from our prayers.
Well, I mean, this is what's exciting is in recent years, as these laws have come about, there's that beautiful passage, I think it's in Isaiah, and it says that even the rocks will speak out. If the gospel the good news isn't proclaimed, the rocks will speak.
Yeah, Jesus in the Palm Sunday.
That's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, what's happening is I'm meeting former gay, people who identify as gay, lesbian, transgender, etc. God is speaking to them. No human being is speaking to them. God is literally speaking in their dreams, speaking to them in their car on the way to work. Yeah. It's God is at work. God's saying, try and shut me up. Try and stop me being God. You will not do it. God is unquestionably as alive today as ever been. And of course, all time is present to him. This is why, I do hope there's many people from the LGBT community who are going to listen to this, because I want them to know that in any place that they have despair, there is hope. In any place they feel isolation, God is offering them community. In any place where they feel misunderstood, there is an understanding, tender, caring heart that is waiting for them.
Yeah. And I want to make a point. I don't think it's just that God is speaking. I think it's true that God is speaking to children, and we're in a time of extraordinary revival. More Gen Z males are coming to Christian faith than any other demographic. It's wild. Whatever's going on in culture, it's drawing people to Christ. And I want to say it's not just God who's drawing people, it's ultimately God. But actually the work of evil on planet Earth is making Christianity so attractive.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of folks, young people who would come to me. I've taught them the Bible year on year, and they're sort of passively interested. And then they'll come back and they'll say, I'm a Christian, Sarah. I go, "Oh, what's happened?" "Well, we started watching Jordan Peterson on YouTube." Right.
Yeah, that's it. That'll do it.
Someone's telling them the truth,
Yes.
contrary to the culture that they're in, and they're realizing, yeah, something's up. I got non-Christian mates who are just absolutely sick of like hyper woke, hyper offended culture.
Yes.
They're just done with being told that if you're this type of demographic, if you're white or whatever, if you're male, you're the problem. They're kind of sick of being told that it's a race to be the most offended, that the greatest victim is the most powerful person. They actually just want to see people of substance and character who are telling the truth plainly, who are not super politically correct, and they're really done with the way culture's gone, and they're finding that in Christ.
Yes.
So there's this whole, the devil's being used like a pawn to bring people to the Lord.
Well, you've got to remember, you see, the devil can create nothing. He only twists truth. This is why there's so many people in the LGBT community say, well, this is my truth. And I say, look, there's an aspect of truth in your attraction, everything else that's there, but actually it's a twisted truth. And if you're not open to that twisted truth to be untwisted, you will never benefit and live from the fullness of truth. You will never understand what it is to truly and deeply be alive. I say I've lived that long-term gay relationship, the long-term heterosexual relationship. They are significantly different. And that's why I don't believe in same-sex marriage. I call it same-sex mirage. And that's not me trying to be offensive in the slightest to anybody who's tried to make this covenant relationship between two people of the same sex. I believe what's happened is they've been told this is your panacea, this is going to make it all feel fine. And it might make them feel better and put photographs on the walls and different things. But they are still having the true understanding of their bodies from a theological perspective. It's still being denied them. They are not being able to experience life to the full as it was designed to be. They're not, because they can't. It's not a question of, oh, well, the law says this, or we're going to change this. It's not about that. If you're untrue to something's design, then it will not truthfully be in accordance with its design. It can't do that. It can't.
Yeah, fascinating. And we see a lot of younger folks with confusion. I would have to say it's a social contagion or an epidemic in many ways of young folks saying I'm born in the wrong gender, or I'm born in the wrong body, or whatever it might be. And the only way out is to find a gender, either a non-binary gender that suits what I'm feeling right now or whatever. But do you suspect they're going to end up in the same place? Okay, I thought this was going to be my panacea. I thought this was going to help me out. But when I got to that place, I realized I was just as where I was before, but now that I've got this other set of problems.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. I mean, look, I walk alongside people who have gender dysphoria and are trying to make a decision whether or not they should end up going on cross-sex hormones and even gender reassignment surgery. And that is their decision, unquestionably, as adults. But part of my role is to make sure they're fully informed. And many of them are not being fully informed. They're being given partial information. They're being lied to. There's rarely a true psychotherapeutic diagnostic being taken of their lives. There's a lot of child sex abuse. There's a lot of social isolation that's there. We realize that
sometimes there's borderline, crossover with borderline.
All sorts of different issues that are underlying that. And this is recorded in longitudinal studies as well. So that's one thing, walking alongside them. But I also have a number of friends who have transitioned. Some people say I'm anti-LGBT. I'm like, I've got more mates in the LGBT community than you can imagine. And they're my friends and I love them and God loves them. Yeah. But when you see the pain they're in, when you see the fact that they've taken cross-sex hormones and their mental stability is just descending rapidly. And even recently I was with several friends and they just said, we just want to be normal. And I'm like, well, what does normal mean to you? I thought this was your normal. This is what you said. This is me. And if that's you, then this is normal. But they're realizing this is not answering their deep questions. Then the third group I walk alongside are those who detransition. And they just, to begin with, they're almost empty until Christ comes along. And he begins to restore the essence of these people. And he shows them that they are beloved children of God. and they've always been loved and they always will be loved, but they've just tried to find that love in the wrong places, in wrong ways. This is why the church needs to be a welcoming environment for people who are struggling and seeking, that every doorway should say, you are welcome here. But as is true for the rest of us, we have to face and be honest about the ways in which we've gone astray. We've tried to do it our way rather than humbly going with that long surrender and saying, you made me, you show me what is true.
Humility is the absolute key.
Absolutely. And that's why it's pride. And
I just can't believe you would name your organization Pride. It's like you're guaranteed to fall.
Well, and really what happens is there are so many people falling off the edge of it. And of course, it has to get bigger. It has to get brasher. And some might go, yes, it needs to, because it doesn't, override everything. It can override everything. It can do that one day. Let me tell you, it will still never, because it cannot answer the deepest yearnings of the human heart. Because we were made to humble ourselves before a living God. So if people don't, if they miss that, then all they will do is they will actually lead a toxic life, and they will make the society around them more toxic. And to some extent, that's what we're seeing. But it can only go so far. There's too many people today with stories of God's love coming and meeting them in their trauma. And in some cases, there's not trauma. There's just been lots and lots of little incidents of difficulty that's almost pushed somebody off the edge of a cliff, if you like. It's very, very difficult to explain sometimes what goes on within a man or woman's heart. But nevertheless, there's as many different types of homosexuality as there are people who say they're homosexual, if you like. And there's lots of people in between as well today. And this is what I'm seeing is this isn't about being LGBT even. It's about the fact that we as a society have become so overtly sexualized. We have divorced everything to do with the incredible and beautiful and wonderful gift of sex. And we've divorced it away from God. And therefore what happens now is it's starting to curse us rather than bless us.
Well, I think it's so true. I think that group that I'm fascinated by, Gays Against Groomers. So there's these
I know
lesbians, gays, and bisexuals,
absolutely.
and they're just basically calling the trans community, this is their words, calling the trans community effectively infiltrated by child groomers, saying this is just not acceptable. This is not what gay civil rights movement was all about in the 80s and other things. They were never for drag queens doing readings in public libraries. They were never for comprehensive sexual education.
That's right.
They wanted consenting adults to be able to do a certain thing, but they never wanted children to be involved. And they're sort of, they think they're a canary in the coal mine saying, hey, this is not okay.
Well, I think they are the canary in the coal mine. And I say that because as an abuse survivor and someone who runs programs for victim survivors of childhood sexual abuse, what happens is this, and I also walk alongside a number of people who are sexually attracted towards minors, and to understand their stories as well, and the fact that there's a lot more underlying the story of people who are attracted towards minors than we realise. We're part of that for the moment. But the point is this with the Gays Against Groomers is they've understood that there are certain people who've infiltrated the LGBTQ community who want children to make decisions about their bodies and, this, in a sense, their gender or sex, whatever it might be. To the point that within a decade or so, when the argument comes forward that actually we've got a lot of people who are now attracted to minors, and we will have because you've got so many young people who've been so pornographied. And even the police tell us that, really that the greatest growth in child sexual abuse is coming from teenagers towards prepubescent children, because they're looking at pornography, they're trying to access their cousins or brothers and sisters or other kids down the street, whatever it may be. So we've got some real problems coming up in the future. But if a child can make a decision around their body, then in the future what happens is the child may decide. The child should be given the opportunity to decide if they want to have sex with this adult, which then opens the door for paedophilia. Is that the end game? Many are saying it is. I certainly can see that could well be the end game. I don't want to think it is, and I hope it isn't. But I can see that's where this could be leading us.
Obviously, this is just deep deeply shocking, deeply troubling and concerning. But I just think of my mates, typical Aussie guys, looking to earn a living, pay down their mortgage, go on a good holiday, look after their wife, have some kids, right? They're not thinking this way. And it seems so extreme, so dystopian, so crazy. What are you talking about? Legalized pedophilia, government-endorsed child grooming. This is, you've got your tinfoil hat on, basically.
You just got to go to the state of Victoria, mate.
Yeah.
The state of Victoria is literally now saying that, the schools are allowed to be able to engage with the children and question their gender and everything else. Our libraries literally have hundreds and hundreds of books on this topic. I just walked out of a local library, and the key books on show for teenagers were mostly LGBTQ themed books or things to do with witchcraft and wizardry.
Yeah.
Basically, there is nothing about the dignity of yourself. There's nothing about the fact that there's a higher calling for each one of us. It's a turning in on self. It's all about me. That's what it is. And even the descriptions on the books themselves, they were saying,
welcome to sex.
Well, partly welcome to sex, but also, they're having to walk through trauma and they've got so many difficulties and they feel disconnected from everybody else. I'm like, you're actually telling them all these truths, but you're not giving them the solutions. Yeah. You're leaving them left in this place of pain. That's criminal. Yeah. That's criminal when people don't have to be in that pain.
Yeah. Even if okay, this is some pretty wacky, it seems really extreme, but it's actually what's going on. But if you just use logic, okay, so the current legal definition for someone's identity, their personhood, is built around a momentary feeling. That's in effect that's the Victorian law. That's the basis for the New South Wales law. Your identity is what attraction you felt at any given moment.
Yeah.
Your identity is your sexual attraction. Yeah. And it doesn't need an objective external standard. It doesn't need morality. It's just the truest version of you is who you're sexually attracted to. Okay, so that's the present foundation of our legal system. Extrapolate that to minor attracted people. So the truest version of someone and who they are is who they're attracted to.
That's right.
So at what point do we then say, well, pedophilia is not acceptable? If you are willing to say pedophilia is not acceptable, now you've talked about some won't, some want it to be acceptable, but if you're willing to say it's unacceptable behavior, then you have to call upon an external moral truth that's unrelated to your internal feelings.
That's right. There has to be a boundary truth. There just has to be.
Okay, well, let's follow that up. Where does objective external truth come from?
Well, I'd say first of all, I believe it comes from the conscience, which is a God-given thing because God himself is truth. If for truth to exist beyond ourselves means there's got to be something beyond ourselves that is truth. Yeah. That's it. That's why when Jesus says, I am the way for you to find truth, and therefore you'll know life. Yeah. That's why come and know me. Yeah. If you don't come on my pathway, you'll end up down some dark alleyway in lies, and it'll be deathly for you. I came into the gay community in the mid-'80s when people were literally dropping like flies from HIV, and age-related illnesses. We forget that so many people died around that time. Some would say, oh, you shouldn't be bringing that up today. I'm like, look, there's a whole history of people that have died. I got friends who had their same-sex marriage, which I call Mirage. And what happened is they had different comorbidities and ended up committing suicide months after their marriages. Because nobody wanted to deal with the underlying stuff. They were promised Band-Aids for their cancer, basically, is another way of putting it. Nobody wanted to look at the underlying issues. On the topic of paedophilia, my home state is Western Australia. We have some of the best clinicians in Australia, possibly in the world, that understand how to deal with people who struggle in this area. In talking with one of the nation's leading experts in this area, I said, how many people do you think who experience paedophilia, how many of them do you think have been sexually abused themselves? And the response was, well, all of them, of course. All of them. Where would somebody think it's okay to sexually abuse a child unless they themselves had experienced that during the intuitive time of their life? It's become intuitive. All they're doing is they're copying. They're trying to resolve, to repair, to reintegrate, whatever word you want to use, what happened to them as a child. That's what's going on. This is why it's not that we shouldn't have very clear boundaries for people with these struggles. Absolutely, we should. I'm all for safeguarding and all those things that protect children. But on the other side of it, we also must show care and compassion, sensitivity and respect towards people who themselves are victim survivors of abuse. And if we don't do that, then we really are an unjust, quite a nasty society, really, overall.
Yeah.
And I think there's a whole nother area. But as a society, we want to have scapegoats. You know, there was a time when members of the LGBT community or the community itself might have been a scapegoat for our society. Yeah. The church has now become the scapegoat that the LGBT community want to throw stones at. And yet I've never had to tick a box or explain what my sexual attraction is. In fact, I've never been to a church where anybody's ever been asked what their sexual attraction is. The doors are just open and in you come. Welcome. Mm. And those who've never been to a church, give it a go. Come along, try a few churches, see where you fit, see where you're comfortable. But God is a loving God and he has a greater plan for our lives. And if we don't understand what our biology is about and we bring together theology, we make God's sense of our bodies and all that is displayed externally, we will never find peace internally. And we'll never find those connected, deep relationships that we need to have. We'll never enjoy each other's faces. We'll feel shame and we'll want to hide ourselves. Or we'll just have to have more and more pride. And all pride does is it brings a barrier up and it actually makes more enemies for us. Nobody wins. Nobody wins with pride.
Yeah. Yeah. Humility. I think it's the best Christian response to anything that's going on in culture is increased humility. We've all sinned. We're not, that scapegoat thing. Everyone wants to point out the sin of someone just a little bit worse than them.
Absolutely.
And say, yeah, but not me. It's like even with around LGBT, I always say this, the LGBT community does not have a monopoly on sexual immorality.
Not at all.
Heterosexuals have done our fair share of that, actually.
Yeah. I mean, even the phrase LGBT, this is a very divisive phrase.
Because it's internally combusting.
That's right. Well, first of all, it is fragmenting. That society, that community is becoming a disunity. That's the first thing, and will become further so as well. And you'd think that even the gay men might stand up for the lesbian women who are now feeling trans females are being forced upon them. If they really understood what it means to kind of enjoy same-sex stuff, then some of them you think might have courage to stand up, but that's not happening. So in a sense, it's all about it's about protecting myself. It's all about me. Well, selfishness. All that does is it causes misery long term. That's the first thing. But the other thing is God doesn't see LGBTQ people. He just sees people. He just sees people. I realize that even though I am often referred to as a former gay activist, well, in some way, yes. But really what I was just a bloke who'd never faced some of the deeper issues in his life that was stopping him from living life to the full. And everybody I meet, I just see them as somebody who either has faced their issues or hasn't faced their issues, and they have an invitation to come and face them. And we put a proposition, but we never impose. Yeah. That's not our role. Yeah. Our role is to turn around and say, hey, do you want more love in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Exactly. And what a level playing field. I was a former drug addict, alcoholic, but even if I wasn't, we were all former sinners. We came to the Lord and got forgiven, and that invitation goes out to anybody. I just pray anyone who's listening, God is inviting you. He wants to forgive you and wants to heal you. And we just pray that you heard something from James today that just touches you in your heart and that you realize there is a way to get more love in your life.
That's it.
James, thank you so much, mate. I could listen to you talk all day. In fact, some days I do.
I could talk with you all day, I can assure you. Thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Bless you, mate.
God bless you too.